You ever wake up one morning, stumble out to grab your mail and realize something's off? That's what happened to me, and it wasn't just off. It was insane. My house number, painted bold and proud for years, was suddenly changed overnight, and I didn't do it. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. I stood on the curb, coffee in hand, staring at these cheap plastic digits screwed over my original number like some sick joke. My breath caught. What the hell? I muttered under my breath, glancing around the street like maybe someone would pop out with a camera yelling prank video. But no, the street was dead quiet, except for the faint hum of sprinklers down the block and the caw of a crow like it was mocking me. And then, like a bad sitcom entrance, she strutted out. Karen, my HOA's self-declared queen bee, clipboard clutched to her chest, lips twisted in that smug little smile that screamed I win. Oh, good morning, she chirped, voice sticky sweet. I see you finally fixed that numbering issue. I blinked. Excuse me. My voice cracked between disbelief and rage. She tilted her head like I was the village idiot. Your address was confusing the mail carriers. I went ahead and updated it for you. You're welcome. I swear I could feel my blood pressure spike. Who the hell changes someone's official house number without permission? My mail, my deliveries, my identity tied to that number. That's illegal. I snapped. My words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Karen just smiled wider. The kind of smile that says she thinks she's untouchable. Illegal? No. Honey, this is called community improvement. If you don't like it, bring it up at the next homeowners association meeting. And then she sashayed back inside, heels clacking like a villain soundtrack. I stood there gripping my coffee cup so hard it nearly cracked. Was this real life? Was she seriously playing God with people's homes now? My head spun. But here's the thing about me. I don't let things slide. You push me, I push back harder. The fallout started almost instantly. My Amazon package, gone. My electricity bill, returned to sender. Even the pizza guy couldn't find my place. I tried explaining over the phone. No, it's the same house. Someone just changed the number. Do you know how crazy that sounds? Like I'm some paranoid neighbor ranting about conspiracies. By the third day, I was drowning in missed mail, late fees, and the constant gnawing feeling that Karen was laughing from her living room window every time I stomped back from the empty mailbox. I wanted to scream, so I documented photos, timestamps, videos of the wrong numbers bolted in place. I filed complaints with the homeowners association. Useless, of course, since Karen basically was the homeowners association. I filed a police report. They shrugged. Civil dispute. They called it. Civil dispute my ass. This was identity sabotage. And then, this is where karma sharpened her claws. I learned about the postal inspectors. These weren't your everyday mail carriers. These were federal-level investigators. The kind who treat mail tampering like a national security issue. I called their office, voice shaking with both anger and hope, and laid it all out. Wait, the inspector on the line said slowly. You're telling me your neighbor deliberately altered your house number to divert or block your mail? Yes, I practically yelled. She's intercepting federal mail. Packages, letters, bills, everything. Pause. Then a low whistle. That's fraud. Mail fraud. We'll send someone. For the first time in a week, I actually smiled when the inspectors showed up. Suits crisp, badges flashing in the sunlight. I swear I wanted to clap like a kid at a parade. They walked my property, photographed the altered numbers, took my sworn statement. One of them, gruff, no nonsense, said, "This isn't small potatoes. Changing someone's address like this, that's a federal offense." And wouldn't you know it, right then, Karen came storming out, lipstick perfect, voice sharp. "What are you doing on my street?" she demanded, waving her manicured hands like she owned the pavement. The inspector didn't even flinch. "Ma'am, we're investigating allegations of mail fraud. Did you authorize the renumbering of this residence?" Karen scoffed. "Authorize? I implemented it. This whole block has been a mess. I've been correcting things for months. Someone has to take responsibility around here." I swear, my jaw nearly hit the sidewalk. She admitted it. Out loud. To federal agents. I had to bite my lip to stop myself from laughing. The inspector scribbled something down, then looked her dead in the eye. "Ma'am, what you've done is a violation of federal law. You've obstructed and tampered with official mail delivery. That's fraud." Karen's face drained faster than a bathtub. "Fraud? No. I was helping. You can't be serious." "Oh, we're serious," the inspector said flatly. And here's where the twist slapped me sideways. I thought this would just scare her, maybe force her to back off. But the inspectors, they didn't come to play. They started asking questions about other homes, other changes she'd made. Turns out, she'd been doing this all over the neighborhood. Renumbering, rerouting, even collecting mail she claimed was misdelivered. My stomach turned. She wasn't just messing with me. She was building her own little empire of control. One mailbox at a time. Within weeks, subpoenas flew. Neighbors started whispering. Some furious. Some relieved. A few even confessed they'd lost checks. Legal documents. Passports. Things that vanished into thin air. And there it was. The ugly truth. Karen had been hoarding power and paperwork like some suburban dragon. When the day of her arrest finally came, I was watering my front lawn. I watched the squad car pull up. Lights flashing and Karen stomp out onto her porch screaming about how it was all a misunderstanding. Inspectors cuffed her, reading charges of mail fraud, obstruction, tampering, and more. She twisted, wailed, tried to glare me down like I was the villain. And for a split second, I'll admit it, I felt a pang of pity. She looked smaller somehow, fragile even, her empire crumbling in front of the whole street. But then I remembered the weeks of chaos, the humiliation, the packages lost, the bills unpaid, the endless nights staring at those wrong numbers like they were mocking me. No, she earned this. As they drove her away, a hush fell over the block. A couple neighbors clapped. One whistled. Someone muttered, "About damn time." And me, I just stood there, the hose dripping in my hand, and let out a long breath I'd been holding for what felt like forever. Finally, justice didn't just knock, kicked the door down. But the real kicker, the homeowners association scrambled. Without Karen at the helm, her little army of clipboard warriors crumbled like stale cookies. New leadership took over. Rules loosened. People actually smiled at meetings again. The whole neighborhood seemed lighter, freer, like we'd all been living under a storm cloud and suddenly the sun broke through. Sometimes at night, I still catch myself chuckling. The woman who thought she could play God with house numbers ended up with her own number, a federal inmate number. And that, my friends, is what happens when Karen pushes too far. She wanted control. She wanted power. She wanted to humiliate me. But in the end, her own arrogance delivered the knockout blow. Because if there's one thing you don't mess with in this country, it's the mail. So next time you see a Karen strutting around with a clipboard, remember, karma's patient. Inspectors are thorough, and sometimes the sweetest revenge is just letting them dig their own grave. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this wild ride, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more unbelievable tales of justice served. The moment the lights went out, I heard my dad scream. It wasn't a yell of pain. Not at first, more like panic, sharp and high like a siren cutting through the cold night air. I sprinted down the porch steps, my heart pounding, barefoot on gravel, already shouting, "Dad, what happened?" It was pitch black inside the shed, save for the red flashing emergency light on the dialysis machine low battery. My father sat there, pale, sweat beading on his temples, the tubes limp. "Power's gone," he said, breathless. "It just stopped." I slammed the door open wider. No, not his isn't supposed to happen. We had clearance. We had approval. My hands were already on the generator's switch, fumbling like mad. But it wasn't just the shed. The entire back grid was down. A cold dread spread through my chest. This wasn't a storm. This wasn't a blown fuse. This was intentional. And there was only one person in our HOA psychotic enough to do something like this. Karen Whitlow, the HOA president with a clipboard for a weapon and a smile made of drywall screws. I remember marching up to her door that night, pounding on it like a lunatic. "You shut the power off to a medical shed? Are you insane?" She opened with that smug tilt of her chin, robe pressed, wine glass in hand. "No outbuildings are allowed to draw power from main residential lines per Section 4C of the guidelines. I warned you. You didn't comply. This is your fault." "My dad could die," I screamed. She sipped her wine. Just sipped, like I hadn't said a thing. "You people always act like the rules don't apply to you," she murmured. "Medical excuse or not, I enforce standards." That's when I realized this wasn't ignorance. This was punishment. You ever feel something in your gut so deep it burns? That night, my father stabilized, barely. The backup power only lasted long enough for me to rush him to the county hospital. But he missed a crucial part of his treatment. He went into emergency surgery 3 days later because of fluid retention that should have been filtered out. All because some petty tyrant didn't like the look of a gray shed. But I didn't just get Maddie got even. Because this wasn't just HOA drama anymore. This was a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And Karen? Oh, Karen had left a trail of paperwork forged so sloppily. It might as well have been signed in crayon. First, I got my hands on the original HOA approval from last year, the one that allowed the installation of the shed and its medical wiring. My dad's medical exemption had been cleared by a 3-to-1 board vote. I kept every email, every timestamp. Then I looked into the revoked exemption letter Karen had smugly taped to our door the week before the outage. The paper was dated wrong. The HOA seal was pixelated like someone had printed it off Google. And the signatures? That's when I knew. She'd forged the board's signature. Not just O'Neill 3. I went straight to Mr. Hollis, one of the actual board members. A quiet, retired teacher who hated confrontation but hated Karen more. "She what?" he said, nearly dropping his mug of chamomile. I laid the forged letter on his dining table, right next to his actual signature on last year's approval. "She's impersonating you, and she cut power to a disabled man's medical equipment. I'm filing an ADA complaint. But I need you to confirm this in writing." He stared at the paper, eyes wide, and said something I'll never forget. "She's going to hang herself with her own rules." It took 2 weeks, but once I filed the formal ADA grievance, the Department of Justice got involved faster than I expected. Apparently, Karen had a history. 3 other complaints in 2 different neighborhoods she managed before being pushed out. She'd settled them quietly. NDA money. No permanent record. But now, with forged documents, medical endangerment, and digital paper trails, that was federal. The morning the ADA enforcement officer arrived, you'd think a nuke had hit the HOA office. Karen had just pulled in, her German shepherd barking in the back seat. The moment she saw the DOJ seal on the visitor badge, her entire face just collapsed. "Karen Whitlow?" the officer asked, calm but clipped. She blinked. "Eyes. We're here under federal jurisdiction regarding ADA violations, criminal forgery, and abuse of power. We'll need to review all HOA communications and digital correspondence for the past 6 months." Dead. Silent. You could hear her breath catch. A soft, almost pitiful squeak. "2 need to speak to my lawyer." "You will, after we access the files." I was standing across the street, coffee in hand, watching her hands shake. She tried calling someone, maybe her lawyer, maybe one of her lackeys, but The agents had already started collecting files from the HOA's computers. One of them waved a flash drive in the air. "Interesting encryption on this," he said to no one in particular. "Wonder why someone would try to hide board meeting minutes." I swear Karen actually staggered. And that's when the twist really hit. Because one of the agents, Agent Mendoza, turned to the group and said, "We also received an anonymous tip regarding HOA funds being redirected to a private PayPal account, linked to a KW Consulting LLC. Can anyone confirm that?" She dropped her purse. Literally dropped it. Turns out Karen had been charging homeowners fake compliance fees and rerouting that cash through a shell company. Every violation citation came with a $75 processing fee, none of which ever hit the HOA books. That's fraud. Flat out. Her face went white as salt. Her lips trembled. And then God. It was so satisfying, she whispered. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Too late. Too damn late." The case made headlines within a week. Local news picked it up first, interviewing my dad from his hospital bed. His voice was hoarse, but his eyes were sharp. "I just wanted to live," he said. "I didn't think I'd have to fight an HOA for the right to do that." And then the national networks came. They didn't just focus on the medical shed or Karen's tantrums, they dove deep into the lawsuit. The DOJ filed both civil and criminal charges. Forgery, fraud, ADA violations. It was a landslide of accountability. Karen tried to settle quietly, of course. Her lawyer begged for leniency, but there were too many victims. Too many families who had paid illegal fines. Too many elderly or disabled residents who'd been silenced by fear. Turns out my father wasn't the only one. A single mother had been fined $200 for a wheelchair-accessible ramp that violated aesthetic standards. An elderly couple had been threatened for installing handrails in their own yard. All of it'll have traced back to Karen's forged letters and bogus compliance memos. When she realized she was going to lose her house, Karen finally broke down during the deposition. "I was just trying to keep order," she sobbed. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. "I never meant for it to go this far. But intent doesn't undo harm." And the judge didn't blink. By the time the lawsuit closed, Karen had been permanently barred from serving on any HOA board in the country, fined over $450,000 in damages and restitution, and was facing 2 years of probation and a possible sentence depending on how the fraud trial concluded. As for the HOA, disbanded. The board restructured. New elections. And you better believe I ran. Not out of spite, out of responsibility. Because the people in this neighborhood, they needed someone who'd never let this happen again. And my dad? He came home to a brand new dialysis shed, built with grant money donated by a national disability rights nonprofit that had seen his story on the news. Fully insulated. Full backup solar grid. He cried the first time he stepped inside. Not because of the shed, but because, for once, someone had stood up for him. Karen thought cutting our power would silence us. Instead, it lit a fuse under a system of cruelty that finally exploded in her face. Funny how karma works, huh? So if you're ever up against a crooked HOA president pulling shady moves, remember lawsuits don't lie, and neither does the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel Lawsuit Legends for more real stories of justice, karma, and HOA takedowns that hit back harder. They thought no one would notice the extra wire snaking from the back of their shed to my solar inverter. They smiled in my face, waved over the hedge, and asked if I'd seen any raccoons lately, all while stealing my power. Now one's facing felony fraud charges, and the other? She's learning that forging utility permits has real consequences. It all started on a Tuesday morning in early spring. The sun had just begun rising over our HOA-plagued neighborhood, you know. The kind where everything's manicured but nothing's sincere. I stepped into the backyard, coffee in hand, expecting peace. Instead, I heard a faint humming, not from my panels, but from somewhere it shouldn't have come from. I froze. There it was again. A low electrical buzz, like static behind drywall. I followed it, and that's when I saw the cable. A thick, black wire, not mine, ran from the rear of my solar battery bank across the fence line into what looked like a patch of ivy. Ivy, my neighbors, the Karen sisters, had planted months ago under the guise of natural beauty integration. Ha! More like natural fraud integration. At first, I thought I was imagining it. I crouched, tugged lightly. The cable moved. It wasn't buried, just disguised. My heart dropped. Was I being robbed? No, I was being conned. The Karen sisters' real names, Cindy and Mallory, had moved in last year and immediately assumed positions as self-appointed moral guardians of the cul-de-sac. They once fined a single dad for letting his daughter use chalk on the driveway. Visual pollution, they called it. But clearly, stealing electricity from their neighbor's solar grid? Totally fine in their book. I paced for 10 minutes trying to calm myself. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe it's... A snap came from the fence. I turned and there was Mallory, half concealed behind her stupid hanging fern baskets, watching me, not even trying to hide it. "You okay, hon?" she called, syrupy sweet. "You look confused." Confused? I nearly laughed. "Oh, just checking some wiring," I said. "I think someone's been pulling more than sunshine from my system." There was a pause. Her face twitched, just for a second. Then she laughed, a forced, high-pitched chirp. "Ha! You're funny." I wasn't. That night, I installed a motion camera and a hidden current logger. Over the next 5 days, I gathered everything: timestamps, kilowatt usage, wire mapping. They were siphoning off nearly 30% of my system's output. That's not a mistake. That's theft. By Friday, I'd had enough. I knocked on their door, binder in hand. Mallory answered in yoga pants and a fresh fake tan. Cindy stood behind her, arms crossed, mouth tight like a lemon rind. "We need to talk," I said. "Oh." Mallory blinked innocently. "About what?" I opened the binder and flipped to the photos. The cable, the wiring, their shed with the modified breaker box. "This," I said. "I'm giving you 48 hours to disconnect and pay restitution. Or I go to the police." Cindy scoffed. "You threatening us?" "No," I said. "I'm giving you a chance." "You can't prove anything," Mallory hissed. "That cable could have been there before we moved in. I have footage from this week. Then we'll countersue for harassment." Cindy snapped. "You're obsessed with us." Oh wow. That was their play victimhood. Classic Karen maneuver. So I said nothing more. Just walked off, my blood simmering like a pot ready to boil. They wanted to play games? I had one. It's called civil court. I filed a report with the county sheriff and the utility board. What I didn't expect, and this is where the twist came in, was what the forensic electrician found when they inspected the Karen system. Not only had they illegally tapped my line, but they'd also forged utility permits to make it look like they had a legal hookup to the main grid. Their submission included falsified documents bearing a forged signature from a retired inspector who'd passed away 2 years ago. Let that sink in. Dead man's name, fake forms, unauthorized electrical connections, and all under the name C. Anders HOA Green Energy Initiative. Fraud. Plain and simple. A federal offense, in fact. Next thing I knew, the FBI was looped in because the forgery touched public records, and the state utility board was furious. I just wanted my stolen energy back. Now it was a full-on indictment. I heard the news from my lawyer. He chuckled as he read the filing. "You're going to love this," he said. "They didn't just tap your grid. They sold power back to the municipal co-op claiming it was their own solar generation. That's utility theft and fraud. Minimum 5 years. I gasped. "Wait, they sold my energy?" "Yup. Peak hours. You were generating, they were cashing in." My hands shook. Not from fear, from fury. These women threw a fit when my lawn was 2 inches too long, but had the audacity to commit white-collar energy fraud? Still, I didn't celebrate. Not yet. They weren't done. Next came the smear campaign. They printed flyers accusing me of framing them, claiming I was harassing 2 women just trying to live eco-friendly lives. They posted on the HOA forum, lied about my cameras, even doctored screenshots of me supposedly trespassing. But here's where karma walked in wearing heels. Their fake screenshots? Metadata embedded with editing software tags. Their flyers? Left on every doorstep in violation of HOA rules. Their forum posts? Traced to a fake profile, Sustainable Steve 45, that matched Mallory's IP address. It unraveled fast. The HOA called an emergency meeting. Cindy showed up in pearls and crocodile tears. Mallory beside her in a lime green blazer that screamed, innocent. They begged, pleaded, blamed, said they were being bullied. Then my lawyer wheeled in the county inspector, and the sheriff, and the real documents. The room went quiet. Cindy gasped. Mallory clutched her purse like it held the last ounce of dignity she had. One board member asked gently, "Why would you forge a dead man's signature?" Mallory burst into tears. Cindy screamed something about entrapment. And I finally smiled. But it wasn't over yet. They were indicted within the week. The local paper ran the headline, "Sisters accused of solar grid fraud, facing lawsuit over forged utility permits." That was the first time I'd seen my backyard mentioned in the press. Funny how something so ordinary became the heart of a federal investigation. Mallory tried to negotiate. Her lawyer floated a quiet settlement restitution. Silence. No jail. But the state wasn't having it. The forged documents crossed into felony territory. Cindy's signature was on everything. Turns out she was the one who submitted the fraudulent forms. The state's utility fraud department made an example out of them. They had to. And me? I filed a civil lawsuit right after the criminal charges dropped. Damages for energy theft, defamation from their flyers, emotional distress. Their lawyer tried to argue I was exaggerating, that the energy taken wasn't substantial. But guess what? Every kilowatt counts when it's stolen. Every lie? Documented. Every smear? Printed. They underestimated me. Maybe because I kept to myself. Maybe because I wasn't the loudest voice at the HOA meetings. But I learned something valuable. You don't have to scream to be heard, you just need receipts. Their homes are still there, but the blinds are always drawn now. Cindy wears sunglasses at dusk. Mallory walks her dog at 5 a.m., head down. They don't wave anymore. Good. I didn't need fake smiles anyway. The HOA quietly rewrote several guidelines after all this. Now they require third-party inspection verification for any private power systems. I guess you could call that my contribution to the neighborhood, unintentional but necessary. Sometimes I walk past the fence where that cable once ran. It's gone now. Just bare soil and an awkward silence on the other side. Still, I can't help but feel a bitter kind of satisfaction. They wanted free power. What they got was a lawsuit, a criminal record, and a permanent note in the community files labeled utility theft and fraud. What did I get? Peace. Finally. And if you liked this wild ride of karma, fraud, and a fiery lawsuit, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more real-life HOA drama you won't believe. You ever had one of those moments where your stomach drops and your blood feels like it's boiling? That was me. Standing on my porch, holding a neatly folded letter from the Homeowners Association. Reading the words, violation, unsightly landscaping. Fine, $10. 000. $10,000. For my garden. The very garden my grandmother planted with her bare hands. The one with ivy curling up the trellis like green lace and roses that smelled like sweet memory. I laughed. No. Correction. I barked out this half-crazy laugh that quickly turned into a wheeze. Are you kidding me? I muttered to the empty air. The birds pausing on the power line like they were witnesses to my humiliation. I could almost hear my grandmother's voice scolding me from the past. Don't you let anyone disrespect these flowers. Not these. But then came the rage. My fists clenched so tight I could feel my nails digging little crescent moons into my palms. $10,000. Who even has that lying around? And more than that, who the hell gave Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of our homeowners association, the right to decide my garden was ugly? You don't know Karen yet. Let me paint the picture. Imagine a woman with oversized sunglasses permanently welded to her face. Hair so stiff from spray it could deflect bullets and a clipboard clutched like it's the Constitution itself. Every street has one. Every homeowners association breeds them. Ours. just happened to come in the deluxe nightmare package. She strutted up to me not even 10 minutes later, as if the timing had been rehearsed. "I see you got the letter," she said, voice dripping with mock sympathy, though her smile stretched thin, sharp as a blade. I inhaled, steadying myself. "Karen, this is my family's garden. It's been here for 70 years. It's not ugly. It's history." She snorted. "History doesn't pay homeowners association dues. You want to play farmer. Buy land out in the sticks. This neighborhood is about standards, aesthetics, value. And right now, your jungle," she flicked her manicured nails toward the roses, "is dragging us all down." I swear I felt my ears burn. "Dragging you down. My roses have been written up in the local newspaper. Kids from the school come here to sketch. You're calling that ugly?" "Ugly enough," she said, tapping her clipboard with a dramatic sigh. $10,000. Due in 30 days. Or foreclosure proceedings begin." My jaw literally dropped. Foreclosure. Over flowers. The neighbors peeked from behind their blinds, like vultures waiting for a showdown. I wanted to scream, cry, rip the damn clipboard out of her hands. Instead, I did something worse. I smiled. Slow. Cold. A smile that even surprised me. "Fine," I whispered. "You'll regret this." And oh, she would. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the fine notice under the yellow glow of the overhead light. My grandmother's old gardening shears rested next to it, still flecked with dried earth. I thought of all the weekends she spent on her knees pruning, the mornings when she hummed hymns to the roses, like they were her children. I closed my eyes and let out a long, shaky breath. "Okay, Grandma, let's fight dirty." The next morning, I walked into City Hall with a thick folder under my arm. Photos, old deeds, newspaper clippings, even a faded Polaroid of my grandmother standing by the blooming archway in 1962. The clerk, a young guy with wide, curious eyes, leaned over the counter as I spread everything out. "You're saying this garden's historic?" he asked, raising his brows. I nodded. "Not just historic. Culturally significant. My grandmother was one of the first black women in this city to own property outright. She turned this patch of dirt into something alive when the city barely recognized her existence. And now the homeowners association wants to bulldoze it for being ugly." The clerk leaned back, whistling. "You might be onto something here." Fast forward 24 hours. Picture Karen strutting down the sidewalk, clipboard in hand. A smug little bounce in her step like she'd already cashed my 10 grand. The whole block seemed to bow to her theatrics. She paused at my gate, lips pursing in mock pity. And then, that's when the City Preservation Committee rolled up. A black sedan. Official seals on the doors. 3 people stepping out in neat suits with clipboards of their own. Karen blinked, thrown off her rhythm. "What's this?" she snapped, her voice going high-pitched with suspicion. One of the officials, a woman with steel-gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, looked at her flatly. "We're here to conduct a site inspection. This property has been nominated for historical landmark status." Karen's jaw unhinged. "What? By who?" The official flipped through her notes. "By the homeowner. And after preliminary review, qualifies. Pending final vote. This garden is protected under state law." I swear I heard the neighbors gasp in unison. Blinds twitching. Karen's face flushed red. Then pale. Then red again. Like a siren malfunctioning. That's ridiculous. It's weeds. It's trash." The official didn't even blink. "Ma'am, these are documented heirloom species, some nearly extinct in the region. And this trellis." She pointed to the ivy-wrapped archway. Handcrafted in 1950 by a black artisan whose work is registered with the city. This isn't trash. This is priceless heritage. My heart swelled. My throat tightened. I almost laughed again. But this time it was sharp with vindication. Karen sputtered. You can't just... Yes. The official cut her off. Her voice slicing clean. We can. And we are. This garden is now valued at approximately $1 million in historical and cultural worth. Silence. The kind of silence that makes your skin prickle. The only sound was a mockingbird in the distance, singing like it knew the score. I stepped forward, my smile slow and deliberate. Guess you'll have to find someone else to find. Karen. Her sunglasses slipped just enough for me to see her eyes. Wide, frantic, disbelieving. She shook her head, whispering, "This isn't over." But oh, it was, or so I thought. Because here's the kicker. Karen didn't crawl back into her hole. No. She doubled down. She started whisper campaigns with neighbors, muttering about how that garden is a hazard, how landmarks bring in the wrong kind of tourists, how the neighborhood will lose its exclusivity. She even filed an appeal with the Homeowners Association Board, claiming my garden was a public nuisance. And just when I thought she couldn't sink lower, she tried sneaking onto my property one night. I caught her flashlight beam weaving through the roses, her muttered curses filling the air as she snapped photos like some deranged paparazzi. Karen. I barked, my voice echoing in the dark. She froze, slowly turned, like a deer caught in headlights. I was documenting. You're trespassing. I snapped, stepping forward. My pulse thudded in my ears. Get off my land before I call the cops. Her mask slipped. This is my neighborhood. She shrieked. You don't belong here with your weeds and your theatrics. I swear. For a moment, the streetlights seemed to flicker. My voice dropped, cold and steady. The city says otherwise. The law says otherwise. And if you so much as step foot past this gate again, you won't just be facing a fine. You'll be facing a lawsuit. Karen's face twisted, contorted into something almost inhuman. But she backed away, slowly, muttering curses into the night. The next morning, the city nailed the official historic landmark plaque onto my gate. Shiny, permanent, unshakable. The neighbors gathered, half in awe, half in resentment. Cameras clicked. Local news vans rolled up. Reporters shoving microphones in my face. And me. I stood there with dirt still under my fingernails. The smell of roses heavy in the air. My grandmother's ghost at my shoulder. Karen watched from across the street. Sunglasses trembling. Clipboard hanging limp at her side. For once, she had nothing to say. But her silence. It was louder than any scream.